Hello everybody, Happy New Year to you, happy holidays. We're in the middle of December. Waiting with anticipation, is the Fed going to pause rate hikes in December 13th, or are they going to continue the rate hikes? Who knows? We're hoping they pause so we can get off 2024 to a great start. Hey, we're going to talk about seller concessions right now. There are 5 basic things you can do with seller concessions. How you evaluate those is as important as you're looking at a mortgage and what you want to do with the mortgage and how you want to purchase that home. Seller concessions is a big hot topic as the real estate market recovers and volumes return. You know, we're talking about seller concessions. You hear things like 3-2-1 buy downs, 2-1 buy downs. What do these things mean? So I figured I'd do a quick video on what seller concessions are. So let me start at the very beginning. Again, there's 5 things you can do with seller concessions. What is a seller concession? Well, let's say as you negotiate the purchase price of that home, say you offer $350,000 for the home, and the seller is going to give $10,000 in concessions or credits. So the purchase price is $350,000, and then at the closing table, you're going to get a credit from the seller for $10,000 in this hypothetical example. So the question becomes, what do you do with that $10,000? There's 5 things you can do. First one is you could lower the purchase price of the home. The second one is you could apply it toward closing costs. The third one is you could do what's called a temporary buy down. You're probably hearing those in the market as a 3-2-1 or a 2-1 buy down. The fourth is you could do a permanent interest rate buy down with using that credit. And then the fifth is you could do a combination of all 4 of those previous items I described to you and come up with whatever's best for your personal scenario. So the question is obviously, how do you evaluate what is the best financial decision for seller concessions? Let's start at the beginning. It differs for every borrower, for every buyer, because every buyer and every borrower scenario is a little different. How long you anticipate living in the home is important. Do you think you're going to refinance? What do you think the market's going to do in the next several years is important. What does the cash flow look like on the mortgage payment? So all those pieces come into play. But let me just give you my perspective of what I do or how I evaluate what the best course of action is for seller concessions. So obviously the first thing I do is you got to talk to my client, the borrower, find out, look, what are you trying to do? And then I'm going to structure my math accordingly. Before we go into that and kind of how I frame it up, let me make sure everybody knows what a 3-2-1 buy down is. So let's say hypothetically you're getting 7%. I'm making this interest rate up. A 3-2 buy down, what happens is the first year we would lower the interest rate 3 percentage points or 3 points. So if 7 is going to be the fixed rate, take 3 off that, so it's 4. So 4% would be the interest rate for the first year. Then it would adjust up another percent on year 2, so it would be 5, so that's the 3-2, then 6 in the third year, and then 7% would be the interest rate for the remainder of the term of that loan. Let's say it's a 30-year fixed loan. A permanent buy down, they're always a lot less expensive than a temporary buy down, but a permanent buy down, what that would do is, let's say $10,000 gets you a full percentage point or a point, I'll say 1.5. So you would start the loan for $10,000 on a permanent buy down. If it's a 1.5, you'd start at 5.5%. So 7 is kind of the rate. We buy it down to 5.5% or 1.5. So how do we evaluate which is best? Lowering the purchase price, applying to closing costs, or the interest rate? Well, I always look at what is the lowest principal balance on that loan at years 5, 7, and 10. I choose years 5, 7, and 10 because it's really statistically highly likely that everybody's going to refinance or sell their home or sell their house somewhere between years 7 and 10. That's just the way the housing market is in the United States. So in a lot of cases, believe it or not, a temporary buy down can have a higher principal balance, let's say year 7, than a permanent buy down. And the reason for that is the permanent buy down starts amortizing at that lower interest rate from day 1, where a temporary buy down, in our example 7%, the loan's amortizing at 7%. You're just cash flowing a lower interest rate in those first 3 years. And the cost of that difference in that interest rate in those 3 years is subsidized by the seller concession and the buy down. So that's kind of how it works. If that's confusing to you, just give me a call at 720-419-3016. happy to walk it through for you. So in essence, the way I evaluate what the best course of action is for a buyer, I first look at the benefit of the lower interest rate. And then I look at what the principal balance is going to be on that loan in years 5, 7, and 10. And then we just discuss it with the homeowner, because the 3-2-1 cash flows really well because the interest rate's so low in the first couple years. But the 5%, the permanent buy down typically will have a lower principal balance as the loan approaches 10 years. So we just got to work together and figure out what the best course of action is for that individual buyer. All right, those are seller concessions. What you can do with them, as I said, there are basically 5 things you can do: temporary interest rate buy downs, permanent interest rate buy downs, pay for, lower the purchase price of the home, or you can apply them to closing costs, or the 5th option is obviously any combination thereof. Look, a lot of information covered in a pretty quick period of time. I always appreciate it when people check out my content, and I love phone calls at 720-419-3016. Call me. I'd love to chat with you about any of the options, or explain any of kind of the subtleties of seller concessions. Have a great finish to 2023, and let's get out 2024 off to a wonderful start. Thanks again.